I believe that it's our job as adults to unlearn a lot of those constraints that school and career counselors and parents and often people who meant really well for us, that they placed on us so that we can reach our true potential.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Behind the Tech. I'm your host, Kevin Scott, Chief Technology Officer for Microsoft. In this podcast, we're going to get behind the tech. We'll talk with some of the people who've made our modern tech world possible and understand what motivated them to create what they did. So join me to maybe learn a little bit about the history of computing and get a few behind-the-scenes insights into what's happening today. Stick around.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Tech. I'm Christina Warren, Senior Cloud Advocate at Microsoft.
And I'm Kevin Scott.
Our guest on the show today is Chase Jarvis. Chase is an award-winning artist. He's the founder of Creative Live and author of the new national bestseller, Creative Calling. Now, I know that a lot of our listeners tune into the show to hear about all things tech, but we believe that creativity is at the heart of every great tech innovation, and that parallels exist in the creative process, whether you're a software developer or a business leader or an artist like Chase.
Yeah, I think Chase has a really good take on this that hopefully we'll get a chance to chat about here in a minute. But I am a very, very strong believer that all forms of creativity are similar in many, many ways. Like I spend a lot of my own time doing creative things like making furniture or learning how to use my machines in my machine shop. And I'm really convinced that it helps make me better at making technical decisions and writing code, and I've always believed that coding is a creative undertaking.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think creativity and coding go hand in hand. But let's go ahead and get into our conversation with Chase.
Our guest today is Chase Jarvis. Chase is an award-winning artist, author, entrepreneur, and photographer. His expansive work ranges from shooting advertising campaigns for companies like Nike and Red Bull to collaborating with icons like Lady Gaga. He's the founder and CEO of Creative Live, where more than 10 million students learn photography, video, design, music, and business from the world's top creators and entrepreneurs. His new book, Creative Calling, launched this spring, debuted an instant national bestseller. Welcome to the show, Chase.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I really, really want to get into Creative Live and your book, I am a customer of Creative Live, actually.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it.
So first, maybe we can start with your background. Like, were you always a creative person? Like, what was your childhood like?
Well, that's a great place to start off. First, I do want to say thank you so much for Behind the Technology, you as a technologist, for embracing that creative side. So many people, and this does go back to, it relates to your question about my history. So many people understand creativity as art. And while art is a great example of creativity, I always want to talk about creativity with a capital C. And that includes, creativity underpins a solution to every problem we will ever know. Writing code is incredibly creative, as is this conversation we're having here. We're co-creating this conversation right now, and either one of us could take this in an exciting, different direction. And to me, that's part of what makes creativity so sort of A, misunderstood, but B, vital. It's like, great lives, great products, great experiences. They're not found. I'm what they call a founder. I didn't find anything. I built Creative Live, from the ground up with hundreds of other committed people. So I think I want to first establish that, creativity with a capital C is what we're all talking about here. And
for sure,
as it relates to my childhood, I think I did have a very creative childhood because in part I was an only child, and my parents would say things like, okay, here's a block of wood, go play in the backyard by yourself for, a few hours and entertain yourself and, cultivate curiosity and storytelling and all the things that we know kids do so well. And part of my ethos and why I wrote Creative Calling and founded Creative Live was to help people understand that creativity that we're all able to connect with as young people is actually the same vital driving force as adults. And yet we have found ways to, in large part, write it out of our day to day because we were coached by, either a career counselor or a teacher or a parent or a spouse that it, for some reason, wasn't practical. And so my fundamental principle is that it's actually the most practical thing there is on the planet. And we do it all every day. And if we just acknowledge it as such, we could drive it to our advantage in a way that few people actually get to do. So let's create a more accessible creative world. And my childhood was very much that. My parents, I was raised very lower middle class. My dad was a cop. My mom was a secretary at a biotech company, and that didn't stop me from trying to express who I was until I started, bumping into all those teachers and the school system and so many of the things that, and sometimes for good reason, provide constraints. I believe that it's our job as adults to unlearn a lot of those constraints that school and career counselors and parents and often people who meant really well for us, that they placed on us so that we can reach our true potential.
Yeah, I so agree with that sentiment and push. Like, well, one of the things I'd love to get your opinion on is I think oftentimes people look at the end product of creativity. So like a work of art, a photograph, a recording, like a software system, a business, a book, like whatever it might be. And the creative process that helped create that thing isn't visible, and like we think it's mysterious and hard and inaccessible. And it's one of the things that I love about Creative Live. So I'm an amateur photographer, and I've taken a whole bunch of classes on Creative Live to try to get my photographic technique better. And like I didn't feel like I was being intimidated by the process of like looking at a great photographer and saying, oh, like I don't understand this, I can't do this. Like I was just sort of curious, like how on God's earth do these folks do what they're doing? Like I want to know, I want to understand, and like Creative Live and like so many resources that we have available to us now help with that. So like how do you think about that? Like this sort of like the process of creativity.
Well, I love that you asked the process question, because I think at its foundation, that's one of the reasons that it's wildly misunderstood. And I think it's a good place for me to interject. I basically, in my book, Creative Calling, and as sort of the principles that underpin my life, there are three core principles. The first one is that every person is creative by nature, limitless possibility. Again, just the example that you and I are co-creating this conversation right now, that you create every morning, you wake up, you decide. There's this idea of autonomy and opportunity that we all decide what we're going to do with our time. Principle 2, which relates to your question directly, that creativity is a habit, not a skill. It's a process. It's a practice. It's just like a muscle that we develop. And if I were to ask you, if you want to develop bigger biceps, what would you do? You would work those biceps out. So creativity is the same thing. It's this act of creating or repeating a bicep curl that's going to make you stronger. Now, there are skills that can help you create prettier things, but creativity as itself is a habit. It's a process. Now, the third thing, which I think this is where hopefully your brain's going to wake up now if you're a listener right now. The process that we go through in creating anything, whether it's a photo, a computer program, a business, many of the examples that you gave, the process that we go through in creating anything, the muscles that we use, those are the exact same muscles that we use to create our lives. Creating a life is just creativity at a bigger scale. And so for the listener who's sitting there right now, and there's a distance between where you are and where you want to be in your life, if you just look at it as a creative process, as a process where you're putting one foot in front of another over and over, hopefully, you might be 10,000 hours away from mastering your life, but you're only one decision. And that is the decision to try to begin the process of creating with intention the life that you want. So it's crazy that you're going to go home tonight, you're going to decide what to cook for dinner, and that's a creative process. And the same things that are at play there, what am I going to do? What ingredients am I going to put in? How long am I going to take to do it? Where am I going to do it? All of those things are the same ingredients that we have in creating our life. So again, everyone's creative. 2, creativity is a habit. And 3, the process that we go through in creating anything is how we actually create our lives. To me, that just the triumvirate of those things is it ought to embolden everyone listening with this opportunity that, we don't stumble into this world. You're not a cork in the tide, that with a little bit of intention, just like you could create a meal for your family, that you can create this life that you might feel distanced from right now, that is inspiring and enriching, and this is this one precious thing that we get. So let's make it a masterpiece.
Yeah, so true. I mean, it's like not just a beautiful sentiment. Like I actually believe the truth of what you're saying. I do want to focus a little bit on this idea of creativity as habit, because like that really, really strongly resonates with me. So as we're having this conversation right now, I'm about to take some time over the next couple of weeks to just spend 2 weeks of my time learning. And what I intend to learn are adding a set of things to my creative arsenal. It's almost like working out the creative muscle. So
Yep.
I've got someone who's going to come to my shop and teach me how to use my TIG welder better.
There you go. Amazing.
I tell people I'm doing this, and they're like, "What does TIG welding have to do with being CTO of Microsoft?" And I really do believe this thing that you said, that adding that skill to my arsenal and then using it. Like I have a project. Like I'm not just going to learn the skill in a vacuum. I've already designed this steel and walnut bench that I'm going to make.
Amazing.
And so it's going to be so much fun, and I'm going to then have this creative experience that's going to not just be fun, but I think it's going to help me be more creative in general.
This is let's use science for a second. The science on creativity is really clear, that creating anything helps you create everything. And so truthfully, like you learning to weld and expressing what it's like to try and put 2 or more things in your world that previously weren't put together, to try and put those ideas together in real time. Your brain is literally, it's neuroplasticity is not new probably to your audience. That means your brain has the capability of learning new things and creating new pathways and connecting things that used to not be connected. Like that is the act of creating at its most fundamental level. And that is a transferable skill, that experience of creating, the walnut and steel piece was a steel. Is that right? Walnut and steel?
Yep.
That like the act of conceiving, of planning, of activating those neural pathways, that's the same set of muscles that is going to help you solve the problem in the boardroom. That's going to help you unlock the next chapter of technology for Microsoft. And, this idea that somehow we as humans are divorced from this process, that we either have it or not. The really sad thing, I'll tell you a short story about my childhood. So you asked, did I believe I was creative? I did until 2nd grade. And I walked in my 2nd grade classroom. It was the student teacher conference night, and they paired it with the ice cream social. So you could show up like after school. Your parent or guardian would have, 10 minutes with the teacher while the kids are supervised eating ice cream in the gymnasium or whatever. And I happened to go looking for my mom in my second grade classroom, Miss Kelly, and I happened to walk in. There was some other folks waiting in line. And I walked in there just in time to hear my teacher, Miss Kelly, tell my mom that I was so much better at sports than I was at art. Now, I had just come off of I made my first film in the summer between first and second grade. I had a magic show. I had a stand-up comedy act. I thought of myself as artistic. And to hear that from my teacher was like, And, maybe some empathetic listeners out there saying, oh, poor young Chase. But what poor young Chase did was just adapt. So I did whatever my second grade teacher said, is like, I'm good at sports. That's how I'm going to get, revered and respected and patted on the back as a good little boy. And so I ran headlong into sports, and sure enough, it served me well. I went on to be, successful in sports. I went to college on a soccer scholarship, played in the Olympic development team, but I turned my back on creativity because my second grade teacher said I wasn't good at it. And so how sort of sad. And it was only through if you read the book, I chronicle the story pretty carefully about my grandfather actually died, and I was given his cameras, and this was a catalyst for me to sort of dig back into it. But, if you look at your initial question or comment about the relationship between trying new things and how it could possibly affect your ability to be a better CTO, like the science is really clear. It's messy because right now there's someone who's listening to this who subscribes to your show because they think of themselves as a technologist and thinks that creativity is sort of a nice to have. But if you look around, and just to be direct, I have deconstructed the lives of hundreds and hundreds of the most creative, successful people in the world that have been on my podcast, that teach on Creative Live, that are now my friends. These are billionaires, entrepreneurs, genius creators, everything in between. And there is a correlation. They all understand that the opportunity to learn new skills, to put yourself around people who, build you up rather than knock you down. This idea that spending time pursuing things that interest you, for which you have curiosity, that these are force multipliers to everything in your life. And ultimately, sort of a concept that I've taken away from these hundreds of conversations are that choosing creativity in your life is ultimately refusing to betray your potential. Choosing creativity is refusing to betray your potential. And it seems like with your project, deciding that you're actively going to invest in learning and experimentation and building your creative bicep by actually learning to weld and doing hobbies that seem irreverent relative to your professional life, that's actually where the best stuff in life really is.
Yeah, I again, strongly agree with that. And, it's sort of interesting, like when your teacher told you, or was telling your mom that you were so much better at sports than art, like, I think this is another thing people get confused about all the time. So she may have had in her head that, like, you weren't good at some, like technical skill
Painting,
in
right.
art.
Painting,
shading.
Right?
That has
8.
nothing to do whether or not you're creative. So
sure.
Like, you can learn skills, you can accumulate them, like this loop that you were describing where, curiosity and investing in yourself, is sort of at the core of creativity. Like, you can learn anything. Like, I'm really convinced of this, especially with kids. Like, I hate this idea that like we tell children that they're not good at something.
For sure. I mean, let's walk into any second grade classroom, since I used grade 2 as my example and Miss Kelly shut me down. Walk into any second grade classroom, go up to the front of the room and say, who wants to come up to the front and draw me a picture? How many hands go up? Every hand is just every hand goes up. And then you ask the same question as a 6th grader, and then a 9th grader, and then a senior. And the number of hands that go up sort of systematically goes down. Now, I feel like we are on the cusp of a complete transformation and a reawakening, largely in part of, the work that you do to put tools in the hands of people and to remove the gates from, popular culture. You used to have to, know a bunch of gallerists to hang your art in a public space, or you used to have to get the permission of a photo editor, a magazine editor to write. And now, because of the internet, we're largely on the early part of the backside of the democratization of all of these tools, where they're free or cheap or widely accessible. And look what's happening. The creator economy. 40% of Americans have a side hustle where they make money beyond their actual 9 to 5. That's 70 million working Americans have a side hustle. That's one of the fastest growing parts of the economy. I think it's the fastest. So this idea that for somehow not entrepreneurial, not creative, when you look at the economic creative class, to use Richard Florida's term, it's a transformational size of the economy. And then if you look one level below that, what's beneath that? The human beings that are actually doing that work. That's you, that's me, and that's that would-be doubter who's saying, I don't think of myself as creative because, it wasn't sort of fostered in me. What if we could turn that frown upside down? What if we could change that belief that that person who does not see themselves as creative? Like, I just think the power there is acknowledging our own creativity is the human superpower. It's part of what differentiates us from every other species on the planet.
So let's maybe talk a little bit about the process of being creative. Like, one of the things that I think people get hung up on is fear of critique or fear of failing. Like, I remember I went to a Ralph Gibson workshop on photography. Ralph is like one of the most famous photographers of the sort of mid-late 20th century. And I have no business on paper being at this workshop with him. Like, I didn't go to art school. I'm not a professional photographer. Like, my photographs haven't been in any galleries. Like, there's nothing by any sort of traditional measures that would say that my photographic skill or my work would merit, like me being able to, sit down and learn with someone like Ralph Gibson, with a group of other, aspirant photographers. And so, like, that's one weird thing, like the I am not worthy, mindset that sometimes people have. And then the other is like, I was a little bit anxious about going to this thing because, like, what is this person who is like a really eminent photographer going to think of my work? And is he going to think it's all garbage? And, am I going to be embarrassed? And, the thing that I've just sort of learned is my process of becoming a computer scientist and a tech person over the years is like that I've had to get over this imposter syndrome that I always have, and be willing to make myself vulnerable to situations where I'm pushing myself beyond my limits. And whenever I do that, I learn something, and I'm able to do more afterwards using what I've learned. And so I don't know whether you see that pattern with other folks.
What you just described it's beautiful when you actually are able to transcend that fear, even for a moment, because you do it once and you're like, wait, all the best stuff in life is on the other side of fear. And whether that's fear of being judged, fear of not being enough, fear of someone laughing at your creation or your first stab at something, on the other side of all of that is where the best stuff is. And again, I go back to this concept of just imagine if you could set aside your ego, even temporarily, in order to try something new, to try that thing that lights you up. Like, that is, to me, the human superpower. When you enmesh some passion, a little curiosity, a little opportunity, and the temporary suspension of fear to do something that you are enthusiastic about. That's, if you don't love your job or you're tired all the time, what you're really tired of doing is things that don't inspire you. And as soon as you can direct your attention, your experience, and to be clear, again, you are in charge. You might have bills, you might have all of the things that are typical trappings and excuses that I hear people make that are all very real. There's privilege involved. There's opportunity costs. There's opportunity, period, with the capital O. All those things are hurdles. But if you take, even for a small moment, and even once a week, and then once a day, and then once an hour, you start leaning into overcoming or transcending or just borrowing, pretending for long enough that those fears and trappings don't exist. That is the ticket to being able to live the dream, that how you spend your time, what you work on, who you work with. It's actually, again, it might be 10,000 hours away if you actually to get to do those things professionally or for a living, or even if you just want them to be an enriching hobby. But you're only one decision away from deciding to try. And to me, that is exciting. And when I hear you say you're going to go to this, this class with Ralph, the book that you mentioned early in the intro and that I wrote, it is essentially, it's a Trojan horse. It's a book about creativity, and yes, it will help you supercharge all your creative endeavors, whether you want to, again, make a workbench or a computer program or a business or a meal or whatever. But the Trojan horse is that this is sort of this key to unlocking your human potential. And it's intimidating. Like, where do I even start? So I've tried to make it brutally simple. The book's divided into 4 parts. And the acronym is very simple. It's a creative process, and you can apply this to anything. You can apply it to dinner. You can apply it to your life. IDEA, idea. I stands for imagine. D for design. E, execute. And then A, amplify. This is just a very simple 4-step process for anything creative. And I'll just walk you through one example. Imagine is we have lost our ability to imagine what's possible. We're told by our career counselor, we're told by our parents, you're going to be a job, but you're going to do one of these 4 jobs. You're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever makes your parents proud. That's not imagining what's possible for this one precious life. That's, and to be fair, it's confusing because this information comes from people who we care about and who care about us very much. And so, to go against these, the messages that we get from popular culture to be rich and fit and all these things that we've lost our ability to imagine what we want for us. So how do you start? How do you rekindle that? You just start to play in your mind. Imagine what, if you could write a script, what would it look like? So imagine. The second step, and this is true again with dinner or your life. Imagine what you want to eat. Design a plan to get what you want to eat. I got to go to the grocery store. I got to spend $18 on, I got to get some chicken. I got to get some pasta. Whatever the thing is. So you're designing a plan to get there. If I go to the store and I allow enough time, I'm going to be able to cook a different, new, exciting meal. And I found a recipe, whatever. Imagine, design the plan, execute the thing, right? Do the thing, do the process, make the bench, go to the photography seminar, make a new picture. And then the thing that is missing from 99% of the people's equation out there is this idea that I call amplify. It's the A in the idea framework. And that is show other people, talk about it. Because in doing so, in verbalizing it and saying, hey, I made a new meal. It's a little bit of an experiment. Join me at the table. Tell me if it's too spicy or you don't like olives, or in engaging, that is inherently human. And you get feedback on your process. You get to develop an awareness of, are you hurt by that feedback? Are you inspired by that feedback? Does it make you want to do more or less? But most importantly, when you put it out there in the world, it's acknowledgement that you are creative. So if this little people that are, say, technologists or listen to your podcast or are the victims to what I shared earlier, that cultural sort of narrowing of creativity with a capital C. If you just apply that 4-step process to anything, I think it's a good step in getting you where you want to go.
And like, I really do think that last bit around amplifying, like showing your work, like it's also helps create connection. Like so many of the best conversations that I have ever had come from meeting people I otherwise wouldn't have met because I show them something that I've made.
Mm-hmm. There's like, a vulnerability in there. There's an authenticity. And for people that are scared or don't have skills, great. How do you get any skill? You practice. Yep. And whether you're practicing singing or guitar, or again, there's any number of things that we've named, like that's actually a bonding experience when you sit down with other people who have shared interests or are, and you don't have to actually sit down, whether we're still, emerging from the pandemic here, or whether you live in, Muskogee, Illinois, or in the middle of what you don't consider to be a creative hotbed, you can actually connect with people. Use Creative Live as an example. There's a community of 10 million people there who are creating and learning. And if you start to do that together, that is an empowering feeling. And as you've shared just moments ago, like that vulnerability and sharing and connecting around these ideas that you have about, what you can do, make, be, or become, like that, we're social animals, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. This is something that will light you up.
Yeah. And honestly, I think, so I'm an introvert, like super duper capital I introvert. And I think maybe for introverts, like it's one of the more valuable things that you can do because it's like a super structured way for you to connect with other people. It's like, it's a built-in icebreaker. Like, here's this thing. I made a bench. I made a mechanical doohickey. I wrote a piece of software that I'm making open source. I've done this thing, and like I'm just going to put it out there into the world, and then the conversation can be around that thing. And so like you just know what you're walking into.
Yeah, and it's an invitation to connect with just a little bit of distance when necessary. I'm married to an extreme introvert, and I'm relatively extroverted myself. And so observing, I approached that, like her introvertedness as a little bit of a learning for how the different sort of introvert or extrovert or ambivert might look at the creative process or might look at feedback. And what I learned, we've been married for more than 20 years now. So this is that it truly is accessible to everyone. And creativity is this invitation to connect around shared ideas, shared experiences. And now with the internet being, connecting us and providing a vehicle, a set of pipes for connection, like that serves any personality type. It serves the opportunity for you to have mentors that would historically have been way out of your league. You talked about getting together in Ralph's. Well, if you couldn't sign up on the internet, you probably wouldn't have been there because, and that's why Creative Live was so disruptive, because people used to spend $3,000, $5,000, fly across the country to New York, stay in a hotel for 3 days and to try and learn with some master. And now you can not just take a class from them, you can correspond with them in real time, ask them questions. And to me, that's glorious. And for those who are listening to this right now, and this idea is new to you, this is what you're missing. And for those who are practiced, this is your ticket to pursuing, your dreams for this one precious life.
Yeah. I think Creative Live is a really amazing community. One of the first class that I took on Creative Live was from a photographer named Joey L. And Joey is this very super talented young documentary portrait photographer. So like, I think he shot advertising and, like a bunch of commercial work, but he uses that as a way to fund these explorations that he does. Like he'll go to Africa, he will go to India, like he goes into these communities and he tries to capture something about these communities that are
He's very
reflected.
cause driven, right? He uses the money that he makes from commercial to make other great art that unlocks our awareness about indigenous peoples and conflict. And I think that's a great way for people who are introverted or are are looking for an example of where to get started. Like, how can you learn from someone like Joey L? How can you start to apply your skills and experience and whatever you've done for your life? You have a gift, and whatever is in your childhood, the thing that lit you up when you were 8 or 10 or 15 or 20, or whether it was a guitar or a computer, like those are available to you right now. Today, you could stop listening to this podcast. You could drive to a store. You could look something up online. You could join a free class. You could, there's so many ways to activate. And I just think that that's so refreshing, so empowering. And this idea that we're a cork in the tide, we can sort of shelve that, what I think is antiquated, understandably, because so many people feel like that. That's what a school system and a work system is designed to do. There's no malevolent dictator making us feel that, but that's a mass cultured society that's part of how it manages people, right? You have to put them in a system, otherwise it's too much for the system to handle. And yet you don't have to succumb to that. And it takes a little bit of awakening, just a tad bit of awareness. And then the application of this process is create a process, imagine, design, execute, amplify towards anything. And I promise, if you do this, 1 or 2 or 3 times, the first time it's a little painful. I'm not going to lie. It's sort of like Bikram yoga, or I think it's just hot yoga now because the guy Bikram is a real jerk. So they took his namesake away from him. But hot yoga, like the first time you do it, it kicks your butt. And then if you're willing to sign up for 5 sessions, the second time you're like, it sucked a little bit less, but I can see the benefits. The third time, like, wow, I've never felt better. 4th and 5th, you're excited. And the same is true with going to the gym or creating. The first time you sit down to try and write a song after you haven't written one since you were 14, painful.
Yeah, and it's certainly true for code. Like coding is this thing where it takes everyone a while to get good at it. And like, this is the thing, I tell people all the time, you shouldn't let the fact that your first attempts are painful or not quite as successful or as easy as you would like them to be to deter you from continuing to try. I mean, it's like a virtuoso concert pianist. Like, I think sometimes we have this romantic idea that these virtuosi are just sort of born with, the ability to, play, Liszt piano concerto, Chopin ballad, and it's just not true. Like, they practice, they start off their crap in the beginning because they have nothing in their fingers and like don't understand anything about music theory, composition, and they just spend an enormous amount of time building all of the understanding and skill and repertoire so that they can perform at a very high level. And like, it's the only path to getting to the high level. Like,
this is available to
work in.
This is available to everyone in any discipline that you choose. And people say, the example I always get is like, well, if you're 5'4", it's really hard to play in the NBA. Well, first of all, people have done it. I'm not saying I recommend it, but my guess is that you might be in love with basketball generally, and there's lots of things to do around basketball if you're 5'4", besides start on the, on the Utah Jazz or the Knicks or the Bulls or whatever. There's lots of things to do, and by exploring that, you're going to uncover things about yourself and things about your passions and area of interest. I think it's important to make another point, which is, you talked earlier about, I didn't feel qualified to be in that class with Ralph and these other people and didn't know, look at this. I think this idea that I might not belong or that creativity is for everybody else. I want to be crystal clear. You do not need a new set of friends. You do not have to wear a beret and move to Paris and smoke cigarettes and that is not what creative is. That is this romantic and I think perversely romantic view of what creativity is. None of those things are true. You can be creative right now in this moment with what you have. And in fact, that's the only place to start. Start right now where you can with what you have and go from there. And I believe that if you start walking, in the book, again, I talk about this sort of a calling, a curiosity, and then you put yourself on this path where, nothing is a waste of time, even a road where you find out that something doesn't interest you. Like that's actually a discovery in and of itself. And there's this toggling back and forth between lessons in creativity and our personal exploration and expression and lessons in life. They're basically one and the same. So you don't need a new set of friends. Even if you don't feel welcome, it's probably you more than it is the community. And if it's the community that it really is turning you off, then find a different community. But the most important thing, and the thing that I feel like we do our disservice to ourselves, is to not start. The list of reasons why is long. And if you do anything or take anything away from our conversation here, dear listener, it's just start. No one feels ready. Everyone starts before, just if you deconstruct the work of the most successful, happy, fulfilled people, it's that they would say, just start. I've done the research. I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And there's, a handful of common threads. One is just start, just begin.
Yeah, that is certainly consistent with what I've seen in my cohort of peers and the people that I've had the privilege of working with. And I guess the other thing too, like I'll just sort of agree with you on it is way more important to like have the curiosity and the creative impulse and to get started than it is to like have a skill or a tool. If you have this creative impulse and this curiosity, you can always earn the skills and you can earn better tools so that you can make more complicated things, like, different things. Like I won't even call them more interesting things, but you don't have to wait to get started until you have the skill or the good tool. Like if you're waiting for that, you'll never get started.
So true. And if you're waiting to be happy and fulfilled and rich and set before you take on this creative endeavor, you're going to be waiting forever as well. It's actually the other way around. The science is really clear here. I heard it. It was my own experience. I heard it from everybody I interviewed. All my podcast guests on Creative Live. It's the opposite. If you decide that you're creative, if you call yourself a creator and you start to apply these principles, those are the things that unlock happiness, connection, fulfillment. It's not the other way around. If you wait for happiness, fulfillment, contentment, connection in order to start this thing, whatever that thing is for you, and everybody has a thing. If you wait, you're going to be waiting forever. And there's, the number one regret for the dead or the dying is that they pursued the dreams that everybody else had for them rather than their own.
Yeah.
So if on your deathbed, the thought of regret is terrifying for you, as it is for me, this is the unambiguous, virtually universal agreement, is to pursue the things that you want. And anything in pursuing what you want is a creative endeavor. Again, coding, building a business, a restaurant, like any of those things. And so why wait? Those things, that pursuit in and of itself, is the initial vehicle to jumpstart your curiosity, your creativity, your positivity, your emotional connection with, your capacity as a human being. Which, again, the thing that differentiates us from all the other species on the planet is our ability to combine unlikely things that would not have been combined for it not being us. And the last point there is, you do not have to, like, it's not like you're going to create a symphony that's a masterpiece or nothing. That is not true. No one has experienced that. Even the most talented, gifted geniuses of our time, they had to create some things that weren't genius level long before they could ever, truly be known for the things that the reasons that you know them.
Yeah. So true. And like a thing that I think a lot of people forget, because we sometimes get too enamored of the end product of fully mature genius and just sort of assume that like it was easy to get there, or like there weren't all of these intermediate steps, or that it was like we try to pretend that it wasn't hard for the person that's like whether it's an athletic performance or like it's all hard work.
It is. And it doesn't, the cool thing, this is why I get so passionate about helping direct people towards things they care about. Because if you could fail or struggle at something that sucks, that isn't an expression of you, why would you, the thought of sucking at something that you don't even care about versus like pursuing something, having a chance to pursue something that you care about. And this is not about quitting your job. Some of the happiest, most balanced, fulfilled people have an amazing job that provides them resources, time, space to do the thing that they want to do on their side. This is not just about, again, quitting your job and moving to a cabin in the woods to write poetry, although that may be someone's jam. It's not required. Again, you can do 99% of the things that we're talking about in this show where you are right now. The thing that matters is that you start in an imperfect, awkward way. You just start playing. And there are things in your past that when you do them, I don't care if it's hitting baseballs into a field or, the easy bake oven that you had when you were 9. Yeah. Like, just pursue that for a little bit. Yeah. And the cool thing is that because this is a habit, not a skill, you start to realize that this is available to everyone. And I literally mean everyone.
Yeah. I some of my favorite stories are, like Aaron Copland composing Fanfare for a Common Man and like, a bunch of his works while he was on the train to his job as an insurance executive, or John Grisham, I think, was a lawyer, while he was writing his first novels. And like the thing is, like, you're not trying to optimize for easy; you're trying to optimize for fulfilled.
Yep, and that's a whiff for most people culturally, right? This idea of, again, you have to be successful, all these other things before you feel fulfilled. It's the other way around. Pursue things that are meaningful to you, create meaning in your life. Put yourself, if you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, put yourself around people that, lift you up, that are interested in the same things you are, or challenge your ideas. And, that vehicle creates the success downstream, that it's not the other way around.
Yeah, so we got time for a couple more questions. We talked a little bit earlier in the conversation about how technology is changing the creative landscape. We talked a little bit about how it helps people to do the amplify part of idea, that you can sort of put yourself out there and connect with other people. Like it lets you build a platform like Creative Live. Like what other ways do you think technology is changing the way that people can express their creativity?
Mm. Tools, community, like these are just two completely transfer access, right? Three ways that technology is completely transforming this world. Tools, they're for free or cheap. You have access. Our phones, they're not phones anymore. They're cameras first and foremost, recording devices, communication devices to share work, connect with others. This access to the world's top experts at Creative Live, where you can have access to 2,000 classes from people like Brene Brown, Richard Branson, Damon John from Shark Tank, Tim Ferriss, Sherry Riley. You want to learn about money, you want to learn about creativity, about design, about photography. Like, that's crazy. So if you think about technology in those terms, it's not even kidding. It's literally transformational, the opportunity to have that. The access, again, we've talked about that, how the spaces to share your work, to be a distribution platform on your own, used to be reserved for they had gatekeepers behind them, and now you can start a blog and start writing in 5 minutes. You can share your photos on Instagram for free in 5 minutes. You can there's so many vehicles, and the community part is hard to overstate. Like I wrote a quarter of my book is about community. That's really the whole Amplify section of the book, is about putting yourselves around people that build you up, creating a set of fans and followers and people who like your work or want to connect with you and what you're doing, or are similar minded, or working in areas of interest. Like all those things are completely new as of the last 10 years, and enabled by, for example, the work that you do, Kevin, at Microsoft.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today. Everybody should go buy a copy of Creative Calling. I am very much looking forward to reading the book myself. And I just want to say I'm deeply appreciative of the work that you're doing, because I think nurturing this and encouraging this creative impulse in people is just such an extraordinarily important and good thing to do.
It's just a beautiful light in my life, and I'm one of the few who has discovered their calling, and I can't overstate how joyful. And it's not that easy. It's not easy building a community or a platform that serves millions and millions of people. That from your job at Microsoft. But is it fulfilling? Does it feel good? It feels incredible. And again, then I'm part of the process. I'm connected with people all over the planet who, are similar minded and believe that, we're not a cork in the tide, and we have autonomy and opportunity, and we can cultivate that and chase what we're all after, which is, love and connection and fulfillment, whether that's personal, professional. So thank you so much for having me on the show. I love the work that you're doing at Microsoft. It's been incredible, having been born and raised in Seattle, and Microsoft has always been in my backyard. It's been fun to see what I would consider, I've used the word transformational a few times in this conversation. I don't use it lightly. Y'all are doing incredible things over there in Redmond and beyond. And it's just a beat of a new drum over there, and it's fun to watch. And I look forward to seeing more from you all in the near future.
Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show, Kevin. It's a dream. Yeah, it's a treat.
Awesome.
Well, that was Kevin's conversation with Chase Jarvis. So I was really inspired by that conversation. I'm somebody who has more of a creative than technical background, at least academically. And so a lot of this really resonated with me, especially when you two were discussing creativity as habit. I thought that was really powerful, because I think that a lot of people do go into creative pursuits thinking that it has to be like this instant on thing, like I'm either good at it or I'm not. And there is a habit aspect to it that I think is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I certainly take this approach with my children, where I'm less concerned about the particular creative thing that they're doing and more that they are just doing something creative. And like, I have two kids, like 10 and 12, and they have different creative interests. My daughter is, 12 years old, is just loves writing and is a voracious reader. And so the thing that she spends her creative energy on is writing. And just, I can watch her get better and better the more she does it. And getting over that activation energy just to start, to like whatever is stopping you, whether it's fear or like you're worried that you're not going to be good enough or that people aren't going to appreciate what you're doing. If you can get over all of that and just start, like, you will get better and better. And like, that's the thing where just indulging in that habit is so important.
No, I totally agree. It's interesting because I have a lot of people who still to this day ask me for advice on how to get started writing and how do you do this? How are you good at this? And that's always my advice, which is similar to what you and Chase were talking about, just start. And I say to people who want to write, just write. do it. The more you do it, the more familiar you'll feel. It doesn't matter what it's about. It doesn't matter, make it part of your day. Before I was a journalist and had to do it every day to get ready for that, I used to journal and I used to write every single day. It didn't matter what it was, whether it was snippets of poetry or screenplay or whatever. And I'm convinced that that's how I work that muscle. And I think the same is true for anything else. Like I'm sure with you and your photography or with your, woodwork stuff, like just the very factor of doing it makes you better at it. And that's certainly true as you can attest to coding, right? I mean, like that's legitimately how we all get better at it, is just by doing it over and over again.
Yeah. Not only will you get better at it, it's easier to start the more that you do it.
Yeah.
So, which is, so I had a very similar experience writing. My PhD advisor told me that I should be writing every day. And I'm like, what do I write about? It's like, doesn't matter. Just like set up a discipline, like find a place, find a time, just go write. Like even if it's typing someone else's words, right. Just get into the habit of doing it. And it really, really, really helped. It got me habituated to this whole process where, and he was doing it because he was getting me ready to write a dissertation, and to get into the habit of being able to produce a lot of written output, which is a lot of what being an academic is. And that just having that habit was crucial. And I think it's true for anything, like whether you're a coder, whether you're, you want to be a creative cook and make a great meal once a day, whether you're a flower arranger, whatever it is, there's so many ways to express that creativity. But the only way that anyone's ever going to know how creative you are is you just got to do it.
Yeah. You have to get out of your head and actually, do it. And it can be daunting, but as you said, I think the more that you do it, the easier it becomes and the less daunting and scary it is. So yeah.
And the more you realize how things are connected, that being creative in one thing helps you be creative in another. And I think one of the things that Chase said that's really just sort of practical advice, no matter what you are, even if you don't have the aspiration to earn your living through some sort of creative practice, we're all trying to create a life, and you want it to be a good and meaningful and fulfilling life. And so just being creative in general, I think, helps you just live that more fulfilling, purposeful life.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's a great place to end this. So that's it for the show today. Thank you to Chase Jarvis for your creative inspiration. And if you have anything that you would like to share with us, email us at behindthetech@microsoft.com. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.